is Sharon Siegel. She is an executive coach and will talk to us about who's hiring and how to present yourself during a job interview process. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. So you're saying that India isn't getting all the IT jobs?
Well, there's been an increasing return to positions being based in America after a lot of outsourcing for both positions, call centers, things like mass production of items. A lot of times you don't get the same quality because we all know that we hate when we get transferred to a call center, for instance, in India, and you know that the person doesn't speak English very well, potentially, or may have, with manufacturing, if it's done overseas, a lot of times the quality of things produced in Hong Kong or even mainland China may not be up to American standards, which we've seen with those toxic paint scandals, with all of the lead in all the children's toys, or that with things, even with electronics, a lot of times, we know how often we have to return our cell phones or other things that are made overseas. So that's why a lot of times now people are starting to, again, favor domestic items. And it could be part of that whole startup kind of hipster revolution that people love the idea of things made in America, made in New York, made in Brooklyn, is really gaining popularity. And the same thing with jobs are also starting to return a lot more.
So if I'm looking to go into it, what jobs should I prepare myself to get?
Well, right now, you can never learn technology or you can never learn any new programs fast enough. No matter whether it's a application building software, every day there'll be a new one. So as long as you keep learning whatever field you're in, especially within technology, it's so important to stay on top of any new software, any new features, any new versions that come out. Because if you don't keep learning, you will end up being left behind. So that's why even career changers can do great with the software development fields right now, technology, because it's specifically for people who are willing to keep learning. They're the people that are going to have the most progress in positions and in career advancement, because it's not necessarily about your management skills or your people skills as much as your technology understanding and your ability to explain that to other people.
So do I need to be an IT professional in order to be an analyst?
No. For analysts, that's a really broad term right now, but most companies do need people. I mean, financial analysts are being hired left and right, not necessarily the way that they used to be in, the Wall Street boom where everybody was starting at these huge salaries straight out of school, or that they were going ahead and going straight from a business degree to a business position. Now there are a lot of people who, I used to be a director of some field that's now become more obscure, or where there's been huge downsizing, but I was really great at Excel, or that's a skill that I made sure that I know on advanced levels, and so I can move into any industry with those skills and make sure that, because there's so much hiring going on and there's so few people who really understand how to do data analysis, that once you have those skills, that's invaluable in the career world right now, I would say.
Wow. And you can learn those skills where?
Well, a lot of things with nuances of programs and with doing data analysis, you'll learn on a position, in the job itself. So sometimes it makes sense to start out in a more entry-level position, which can be hard if you used to be senior professional in another field. But that's just part of the economy today. I think that people have to sometimes be prepared to take a step down, but if they give their all and they're willing to learn and continue learning, and everyone will notice that and will eventually, hopefully the person will climb a career ladder in this new position. And even if you start as a data analyst, next move could be doing product development or being a manager of data analysis, to going on to director, executive level directors, and you may end up being higher than where you were as a director of, say, a hospital or administrative position you had previously.
So if you wound up with a liberal arts degree, let's say, and you're really looking for a job in this economy, what should you do?
So liberal arts degrees are really hard because, as someone who got one personally, my career development, at least from my school, didn't prepare me in any way to actually have a paying position. I was prepared to either go to graduate school or to, really just kind of go in on my own. Oh, look for jobs. Psychology majors and English majors are having so much trouble right now because either you can go to grad school, which won't even necessarily guarantee you a job after that, or you can look for a field of being an administrative assistant, which people say, oh, but I could have done that before my degree, or, oh, that's beneath me. And I have my degree, and I have all the student loans, so I need to make X salary. And I'm not going to work, and I'm not going to take a job until I get that salary. And unfortunately, I think that's what holds a lot of people back. Because I'm sure if you look around at stores online, on all the career sites, you'll see so many places are hiring and having so much trouble staffing. And it's not because people don't have degrees and people aren't applying, but it's because people's applications aren't showing how they're clear fits for those jobs. That even for someone who just has their liberal arts degree, if they took coursework, instead of listing that I took this class and 101 for psychology or SPSS or whatever different types of programs a liberal arts major might take, it's not that anyone wants to see what classes they took. They want to know what you know. So if you become an expert on a certain program because you took a college level course, you need to show in your career advancement, or even if it was internships, that you obtain these skills, that this is what you can do that's needed for the job. Just saying you've got the education or that I took this class doesn't really translate to much, because a lot of people know that liberal arts colleges or often degrees can sometimes be sort of what they call fluffy, that they don't necessarily have hard skills to do jobs. So as long as you can show what's in the job description is in your resume, that you have some sort of skills from your degree, that even if you have to start as a consultant, as in an entry-level position in a company, if you give it your all and you have a really positive attitude and you're willing to go above and beyond your job, if you're in a normal company, it's going to be recognized and you're going to be promoted.
Great. Now, you also teach workshops on things like this, correct?
Yes. Specifically, I try to help out with the unemployed or underemployed people, because they're the ones that need the most help right now. People who used to work and were in the career world, especially people who were for extended periods of time, or who were laid off or downsized, and who are now making much less than they used to. So even though they're employed, they're what we call the underemployed. And those are the people who really, because especially if they were an expert in their field, they have the hardest time, and they become the most disengaged, and they're the most, they're the most in need of really just support. And because they're usually smart professionals, these aren't, the kids coming out of school. These are the people who really, had a whole department, and they managed, who knows how many people. And now here they are trying to get an administrative assistant job. And they're asking me, should I leave my master's off my resume? Will that help me? Because am I overqualified, and will no one consider me because of that? So the answer to that would be a yes and no. It really depends on what position you're applying for and where it is. Because if you're going to a place that, especially if you're going to a company that has a culture of growth, and that is going to support that, even if you start at the bottom, you're going to move up, if it's a place that promotes internally, that's a great idea. But if you're going to, to give it your all, show all your qualifications in your resume, all of your experience. But if you're going to a place where, say, it's a long-term position, where if you're going to be an administrative assistant for a doctor's office, where there's no position for you other than being the administrative assistant of the doctor's office, to show you've got all these credentials and so much both aspiration and that you really have these lofty career goals, and they know that this isn't what you want to do, and they know this is a huge step down for you, that would definitely be held against you, because they'll say, oh, as soon as we train her, as soon as another job comes along, she's going to take it. So those are the times when you want to scale it back a little bit with your qualifications or degrees.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, what shouldn't I know you've seen so many resumes, and you told me a funny story once about a lawyer who applied for a position. What shouldn't a person be doing on their cover letter, and what shouldn't they be doing on their resume?
Well, starting with the resume, or the cover letter, both of them, you want to show what skills you have that no one else has. This is why I'm special. This is what I will bring to your job. And it should be very clear on both the resume and cover letter that you are going to bring to the job and complete the skills that are necessary from the job description. So that's really the important necessity of tailoring your applications.
So you're saying pull in the job description and put it as part of your resume?
I'm not saying to cut and paste, because I've definitely seen that too. I'm saying more in terms of making sure whatever skills you have that are necessary are really obvious, that you've done this somewhere else, that you've obtained this skill. So if you need to know a certain computer program, you want to make sure that that's, and say the position is to be a Java developer, you want to make sure that if you're a Java developer and you've done this and you've done applications, that should be the first bullet under your first job, under your name. Immediately start with your experience and have that really clear up front. But if you haven't done it, but you're applying for this job anyway, well, then you can think of the likelihood of, well, how am I going to get this job if I don't have these skills? And there's a lot of what people call the burnout of, oh, I applied to 200 jobs this week and I didn't get one return. Well, if you are really spending the time to make sure that you're a real fit for the job before you apply, you're saving yourself time as well as the hiring managers and people who are screening your resumes time by making sure that you put time into the application to make it a really clear fit. Because if a hiring manager gets a resume, that's a clear, obvious correlation to the job that they want to fill. Say, this is great, this is like gold. They may or may not read the cover letter. That's really more individualized. But again, the cover letter should just continue to say, here are the skills that I have for this job, and this is why I'm the greatest person possible for it. And it should be really positive. It shouldn't be bragging. It should not be lying. Never say things that are not true, because usually people will figure that out. And as soon as there's any sort of even an inkling that there's something that may not be right or a weird feeling about it, they're immediately going to move on to the next person in that pile of 972 applications.
Okay. You mentioned some lawyer who mentioned something in an objective. Do you mind going?
Oh, sure. No problem. So I screen resumes for a number of positions, and one of the ones that came in was from an actual lawyer I knew who was looking to obtain a position. And her first line, which with an objective, which I don't generally recommend anymore at all, but if you're going to put any sort of text or information at the top of your resume, it should again be the skills that fit the job and not other information, because anything else can be used against you. And on average, I would say anywhere between 10 to 30 seconds is how long we spend on a resume when we're reviewing and when we're screening. So if in those first 10 seconds we can't get the information that you've done what needs to be done for this job, or if you're offering information that says you're not the right person for this job, that's it, you're already disqualified. So this lawyer I knew is a real estate lawyer who has a lot of other really broad experience, but specifically wrote on their objective that it was for an attorney position for a nonprofit that was a specific role that would have no relevance whatsoever to real estate. And even though that was her expertise, by her first line and her objective being, I'm an accomplished real estate lawyer, no one probably looked even a word past that. They'd say, oh, real estate lawyer, not for us. Okay, resume number 2006. It could be that simple that if you have any information, and I'm not saying not to put other skills, and of course if she's a real estate lawyer she should mention that, but to have that be the first thing in front and center, that I do something completely different than the job I'm applying for, and that this is and it's not a matter of the experience, it was that she was saying that this is her professional objective, is to be a real estate lawyer. Immediately she would be wiped out for that.
In our last minute, can you tell me how a person should present themselves during a job interview?
Professionally as possible. People nowadays use a lot of slang, are used to dressing casually. It always makes sense to dress to where you're going. I mean, if you're going to a startup company that's really small where everyone's going to be in jeans and t-shirts, and if you walk in a suit, you're going to get stared at, you always want to dress one level above how everyone else will be dressed. So if you're going to anything, even remotely business related, anything in the executive world, absolutely suits should still be worn. For men, they should have ties. For women, just you want to stay with reserved accessories. You don't want to come across as too flamboyant. Your personality will do that for you. You want to make sure you're always reserved and you're just dressed a little bit, at least one step above how the employees will be dressed. So
skirts or pants for women?
I think that's a personal preference. I think as long as you look tailored and your clothing fit you right and are, again, you always go for a drop more reserved than you really think. If you have to ask, is this too much? It is.
Fantastic. Okay, heels?
Again, that could work for or against you. Again, I would say go with personal preference. If you're going to wear heels where you're going to be walking funny, where you could tell that you're maybe just not right on your kilter because you're trying to look a certain way, make sure you're confident. Whatever makes you feel most confident, that you're going to project that I am, again, the best person for this job and this is the look I have for it, then
Great.
You should know that.
Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for watching On Your Watch.